Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karava Vahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Chaiva Tato Jayamudirayeta. Om. Welcome to our next live webcast on the teachings of the Vedantic teachings of the Mahabharata. Let me check all this complicated stuff over here, make sure it's all looking fine, and it is. So we can proceed with our next class as our study continues. We are at the very end of the Mahabharata, almost at the end. We have, for the last few classes, been seeing teachings from the Mausala Parva. And you remember, just very briefly, this Parva is set 36 years after the end of the Mahabharata war. And at this particular point, Arjuna is suffering from deep depression for several reasons. Sri Krishna has just died. Also, and maybe more significantly, he had tried to rescue a group of women, and he was deprived of his weapons and powers, and when he was attacked by some thieves, those thieves kidnapped the women, and Arjuna was powerless to do anything about it. I think for a mighty warrior to suffer that kind of humiliating defeat would add a lot to his depression. As a result of those incidents, as you remember, Arjuna went to Vyasa's ashram. Rishi Vyasa, the author of the Mahabharata, and the essence of this section is Vyasa is both consoling Arjuna and giving him some advice, and we will see that advice today. Consolation is pretty much complete. Vyasa's message to Arjuna is, whatever happened according to the prarabdha karmas of everyone involved. So Arjuna was mourning the death of both Sri Krishna and his entire family, the Yadavas. And Vyasa's message to Arjuna is, there's nothing to be grieved for. Their deaths were guaranteed by their own individual prarabdha karmas. We saw that all in some detail in the prior class. So today we continue to the final section of this Mausala Parva, where Vyasa gives Arjuna some, how can I say, sobering advice. Let's see it. Krita krityanscha vo manye, krita krityanscha vo manye, samsiddhan kuru pungava, samsiddhan kuru pungava, gamanam prapta kalam cha, gamanam prapta kalam cha, tadhi shreyo matam mama, tadhi shreyo matam mama. Good. So Vyasa gives this advice to Arjuna. He says in the end of the first line, manye, I consider, vaha, for you, and it's plural, all of you, for all of you Pandavas, I consider all of you Pandavas are krita krityan. You have completed your purpose in life. What you were brought here to this world to do, based on your prarabdha karmas, you've completed it. Meaning your prarabdha karmas are exhausted or nearly exhausted. You remember, of course, according to the doctrine of karma, when your prarabdha karmas are exhausted, your life naturally comes to an end. And that's exactly the topic here. Vyasa continues, Kuru Pungava, O mighty one of the Kuru lineage, I consider that you Pandavas have fulfilled your purpose in life samsiddhan, successfully. Not that your lives have been failures or wasted in any way, but you have successfully and brilliantly accomplished what you needed to do in life. Further, manye, I consider gamanam prapta kalam cha. Prapta kalam, I consider that the time has come. The time has come for what? Gamanam, going. And of course, it's used here in a metaphoric sense. It's a metaphor for death, going from this world. Just as in English, we have metaphors that we use for death, like we say someone passed away. So here we see another, not a metaphor, but another softer word being used, gamanam. Prapta kalam, the time has come for your departure from this world. Tat he, in the last line, he indeed, tat that, shreyaha matam mama. That would be shreyaha. That would be best. And matam mama, in my opinion, it is best that you should now prepare for death, recognizing that their prarabdha karma is coming to an end. Maybe we should observe here that Vyasa is considered somehow omniscient. He was a human being, but a great rishi, and somehow he was blessed with certain powers that ordinary people wouldn't have, including apparently the power to know another person's prarabdha karma. So here, apparently Vyasa knows that Arjuna's prarabdha karma is coming to an end, and that his natural lifespan is coming to an end. Vyasa continues. Kala moolamidam sarvam, kala moolamidam sarvam, jagad bijam dhananjaya, jagad bijam dhananjaya, kala heva samadatte, kala heva samadatte, punareva yadrchaya, punareva yadrchaya. Idam sarvam, and in the next line, jagat. Idam, this, sarvam, entire, jagat, world. This entire world is kala moolam, has kala, time, as its root, as its foundation. The entire world is rooted in time, my translation here says. Bear in mind that kala here isn't exactly the same as our modern idea of time, but rather it represents all the laws of nature. In our prior class, we spent quite a bit of time discussing how Ishvara's will, figuratively speaking, his will, Ishvara's intelligence, Ishvara's will, is manifest as the laws of nature, the way nature unfolds. And of course, nature unfolds according to time. So time then represents the unfoldment of the laws of nature, the unfoldment of Ishvara's will. So with that in mind, we can say that kala moolam idam sarvam jagat, this entire world is rooted in time, meaning based on the laws of nature, meaning it functions according to Ishvara's will. You remember from our last class, Ishvara's will is that every person should receive the results of deeds they committed in prior lives. It's a very sophisticated way of understanding Ishvara's will, but better to have that than a naive notion about Ishvara's will. We discussed all that before. Dhananjaya, O Arjuna, this jagat, this world, has that time as its bijam in the second line. Kala, time, is the bijam, the source, the origin of the world. the srishti, creation of the world, takes place according to the laws of nature, according to Ishvara's will. Technically, when the prarabdha karmas of everyone is ready to fructify, when the world is in an unmanifest condition after the end of the prior cycle of creation, the need to fructify all those past karmas, the very laws of karma, drive the universe to become manifest again. It's all driven by karma. Of course, driven by means it's Ishvara's intelligence, according to which all this takes place. So, Jagat Bijam Dhananjaya. O Arjuna, the world has its bijam, its origin, with the laws of nature, time, Ishvara's will, and Kalaha Eva Samadate. And Kala Eva, time indeed, laws of nature, Ishvara's will indeed, Samadate Jagat, withdraws the world according to the laws of nature, according to time, according to Ishvara's will. The universe goes through periods of manifestation, as it is now, and periods of dissolution. We use the words in Sanskrit, srishti, creation, and pralaya, dissolution. And this all takes place punareva, it happens again and again, yadrichaya, as it pleases, meaning according to the laws of nature, meaning according to Ishvara's will. These cycles of creation take place. And not only cycles of creation, but cycles of our individual lives. Excuse me. And that's what the next verse discusses, the cycles of life that take place. Saheva balavan bhutva, saheva balavan bhutva, punar bhavati durbalaha, punar bhavati durbalaha, saeveshascha bhutveha, saeveshascha bhutveha, pararajñapyate punaha, pararajñapyate punaha. Cycles of the universe we discussed in a prior verse. In this verse, cycles of life. Saha eva, a person, balavan bhutva, becomes strong in life, and punaha, and then again, durbalaha bhavati, and becomes weak. A person grows strong in life as we grow from children to teens and young adults. We become physically strong. We become intellectually strong. But as we become old, especially extremely old in our 80s and 90s, we all naturally become durbalaha, physically weak, and in some cases mentally weakened by the effects of age. These are natural cycles of life taking place according to the laws of nature being manifestations of Ishvara's will. So everything takes place according to Ishvara's will in the form of the laws of nature. Another cycle, this one is a little bit interesting. Saha eva ishaha cha bhutva iha. We have to break all these words apart. Saha eva ishaha cha bhutva iha. You can see how the rules of sandhi, Sanskrit grammar, cause all these words to merge in a somewhat confusing way. Saha, that person who was strong early in life and became weak early in life, iha here, at the very last word of the third line, iha here in this life, bhutva, having become ishaha cha, having become isha, lord, master, having gained sovereignty, having become powerful, to paraphrase. So a person goes through cycles. Here, the second cycle being discussed is a person can become very powerful in life, and later, punaha, last word, punaha, and then again later, paraihi agnyapyate. The person becomes agnyapyate, ruled over, controlled by paraihi, by others. A person gains mastery in life, power and sovereignty in life at one point, and later becomes subject to the rule of others. In terms of the Mahabharata, this is very much like Dhritarashtra's story, where before the war, he was the king of Hastinapur, and then after the loss of the war, after Kauravas lost the war, Dhritarashtra was no longer king of Hastinapura. Yudhishthira became king, and technically Dhritarashtra was under Yudhishthira's rule, under his control. So he fell, what do they say? You fall from glory. And the higher we rise, the further we fall. There's some truth to all of that. We see that in many realms of life. Pardon me for making this reference. We see it also in politics. We see one political party rising high, and then after the next election, that political party is out of favor and another political party comes into power. Here the Republicans are riding high, and chances are after the next election, Republicans will be out and Democrats will be back in the White House. In India, Congress has ruled for so many years, and now BJP is in power. For how long, we don't know. The point is, everything changes. Everything is cyclic, changing according to the laws of nature being manifestations of Ishvara's intelligence, Ishvara's will, so to speak. Then, Kalo gantum gatim mukhyam, Kalo gantum gatim mukhyam, Bhavatam api bharata, Bhavatam api bharata, Etat shreyo hivo manye, Etat shreyo hivo manye, Paramam bharatarshabha, Paramam bharatarshabha. And this is the final verse of Vyasa's advice to Arjuna. In the second line, Bharata, O Arjuna, Bhavatam api, for you, for all of you Pandavas. In the first line, Kalaha, it is the time. It is the time, Gantum, to go. To go where? Mukhyam gatim. To the mukhya here, primary, ultimate. Mukhyam gatim, to the ultimate goal. It is time for you to go to the ultimate goal, to leave this worldly life and to go to heaven. Is in context. So it gets a little more complicated. We'll see that in a few moments. So Vyasa reiterates what he said before about this being the end of Arjuna's life. He says, for all of you Pandavas, it is a time for all of you to go to the ultimate goal, to go to heaven. Etat shreyaha hivo manye. Manye, we saw that word before. I consider, Vyasa says, I consider vaha, for all of you Pandavas, I consider etat, this, shreyaha, best. And pick up the word in the next line, paramam, ultimate. Paramam shreyas, that which is ultimately beneficial. I consider this the best thing. Bharatarshaba, O mighty one, O Arjuna, I consider this to be best, that you should prepare yourself to leave this life and to travel on to what comes next. This is the message, and I'm smiling because a funny thought comes to mind. You probably have had an instance where some guests came to stay with you and they stayed too long. That's not an uncommon problem. The point is, guests should not overstay their welcome. And in the same way, we are born into this life due to our prarabdha karmas, and we should not attempt to overstay the length of our lives as determined by our prarabdha karmas. What I'm referring to are some kind of strange modern notions, almost science fiction notions, that we can somehow extend our lives tremendously. There are some kind of cultish scientific views that somehow you can extend your life by decades or even hundreds of years. How to it doesn't make much sense. Frankly speaking, would you want to live in a body that was 150 or 200 years old? Think about the condition of that body. Anyway, there are some strange scientific ideas about unnaturally extending the length of the human lifespan. Also, you may be aware of some equally strange ideas about preserving either the entire body or just the head and brain. There are many cases, actually, where the head with the brain is cryogenically preserved. Cryogenic means the head, sorry for being a little bit graphic about this, the head is severed from the body and submerged in a vat of liquid nitrogen, which is, I don't know, a couple hundred degrees below zero, to preserve it, presumably preserve that head and the brain it contains until such time that science is able to bring that head and brain back to life. This is extremely weird. It is unnatural. So it is, well, that's a little too strong. It is strange. And I won't say it's unnatural because God gave us intelligence to do all that stuff. It seems highly unlikely that they'll actually succeed in bringing those brains back to life, but that's beside the point. The point here is about overstaying our welcome. When life comes to an end, it's natural. Dying of old age is as natural as being born, and dying when your prarabdha karmas come to an end. Even if you're not at old age, dying when your prarabdha karmas come to an end is as natural as being born. So with these words, Vyasa concludes his advice to Arjuna. He says, Arjuna, you should prepare yourself for your death, for leaving this world. And the chapter concludes, Vaishampayana vacha, Vaishampayana vacha, etad vachanam agnyaya, etad vachanam agnyaya, Vyasasyamita tejasaha, Vyasasyamita tejasaha, Anugnato yayau parto, Anugnato yayau parto, Nagaram nagasahvayam, Nagaram nagasahvayam. Vaishampayana uvacha, Vaishampayana being the disciple of Vyasa, who is narrating this whole story to King Janamejaya. He says, starting the third line, Partha, Arjuna, who is anugnataha, who is given permission. He's given permission by whom? In the second line, Vyasasya amita tejasaha. He receives the permission Vyasasya, of Vyasa, amita tejasaha, whose glory is limitless. Nice expression. Vyasa, of infinite glory. He receives permission. He receives permission how? Etad vachanam agnyaya, being given permission, etad vachanam. With this statement, with what Vyasa said in the prior verse, which was, Arjuna, I think it is time for you to go. So with these words, Arjuna received permission to leave Vyasa's ashram. And third line again, Partha, Arjuna, yayao, he went. He went where? Nagaram, to the city. Which city? Naga Sahwayam, which is an unusual word for Hastinapura. Naga Sahwayam, that which snakes endure. And it's an odd reference. I'm not even sure what it refers to, but it is a name for Hastinapura. So the Mausala Parva ends with Arjuna leaving Vyasa's ashram and going back to Hastinapura, leading us to the final parva of the Mahabharata, the Swarga Arohana Parva. Notice we skipped over we finished the Mausala Parva, the 16th book, and we skipped over the Mahaprasthanika Parva, which has only 3 chapters in it. And you remember that we tried to stay focused on Vedantic teachings. And in that very short Mahaprasthanika Parva, the 17th book, nothing of great Vedantic interest, but we need the continuity of story. So let me just summarize very briefly what takes place in the prior Parva. And that is that the Pandavas, together with Draupadi, they leave the palace in Hastinapura, and they are en route to they're traveling north to the Himalayas. In particular, their goal is Mount Meru. The idea being that Mount Meru is like a gateway to heaven. That's how it's presented here in the Mahabharata. So they are en route, Pandavas together with Draupadi are en route to Mount Meru, high in the Himalayas, and it's a long travel. Hastinapura is in North India, but it's still hundreds of miles and thousands of feet of elevation. And as they're traveling along, one by one, each of them dies. First Draupadi dies, and then of the Pandava brothers, one by one, they each die, except for Yudhishthira. So at the end, he is the surviving Pandavas. All the others have died. Along the way, funny story, they picked up a dog, a stray dog came, and they kind of adopted the dog, and the dog was traveling along with them. So each of the others have died, and at the end of the Mahaprasthanika Parva, who remains is only Yudhishthira and the dog. The dog turns out to be quite significant. Anyway, I believe the Parva concludes when Yudhishthira and the dog are approaching Meru, and Indra comes on his glorious chariot, and he says, come on, get into the chariot, I'll save you the trouble of climbing the rest of the way up to Meru. And Yudhishthira says, okay, but can my dog also come? And Indra says, no, your dog can't come in my chariot. He was apparently offended. And Yudhishthira then declined. Well, if my dog can't come with me, then I'm not coming with you. Remember, Indra was inviting Yudhishthira to come to heaven, and Yudhishthira refused entry into heaven unless he could bring his beloved dog with him. So for dog lovers, I think this would be an especially nice story. Anyway, as it turns out, the dog, if you can guess this, the dog is not an ordinary dog. The dog is Yama, Dharma, the god of righteousness. And the dog revealing himself as righteousness incarnate, the dog escorts Yudhishthira into heaven. All of this is explained in the Mahaprasthanika Parva. Leading us now to the final book of the Mahabharata, Swarga Arohana. Arohana, climbing into Swarga, heaven. I should mention Mahaprasthanika Prasthanika. Prasthanika, the name of the prior parva. Prasthanika, setting forth, travel. Mahaprasthanika, the great journey, I suppose we could translate it, leading us to the final chapter, final book, Ascent into Heaven, which describes Yudhishthira's entry into heaven. We're not going to see those sections. Again, they're story, but there are other significant portions of that Swargarohana Parva, which we'd like to see, and we will start that now. So, Rishi Vaishampayana continues to narrate all this to King Janamejaya. I should mention that this and the context is a little important here. So as we come to the very end of the Mahabharata, remember the context of a story within a story within a story. The innermost story is all the details taking place on the battlefield and in the palaces. The middle level of story is Rishi Vaishampayana narrating all of this to King Janamejaya. King Janamejaya is doing this ritual called Sarpa Satra. It's a snake ritual, very complicated plot, kind of way back in the beginning of the Mahabharata. And all of this takes place in a city known as Takshashila. So in Takshashila, we have Janamejaya, the king, conducting this elaborate ritual. And during the ritual, there are intervals, pauses, when the priests have finished one part of the ritual and they're getting ready to do the next part of the ritual. In those gaps, King Janamejaya requests Rishi Vaishampayana to narrate all of the story of Mahabharata. The story of Mahabharata, which was authored by Vaishampayana's guru, the guru being Vyasa. So let's see this portion. Vaishampayano vacha, Vaishampayano vacha, etatte sarvam akyatam, etatte sarvam akyatam, vistarena mahadyute, vistarena mahadyute, kurunam charitam kritsnam, kurunam charitam kritsnam, Pandavanam cha bharata, Pandavanam cha bharata. So Vaishampayana narrates, is concluding now, winding down his lengthy narration to King Janamejaya. This narration took place over a series of days, the length of the Mahabharata being such. And he says, etat, this, sarvam, all of this, akyatam, has been told to te, unto you, King Janamejaya. All of this has been told unto you. Mahadyute, he addresses, O mighty one, O glorious King Janamejaya. All of this has been narrated to you. Vistarena, elaborately, in great detail. In great detail, referring to the very length of the Mahabharata. Long ago, when we started our study, I made comments about the length of the Mahabharata and some of its revisions. The modern version of the Mahabharata that we used is called the critical edition. I think in the 1910s or 1920s, a board of scholars in India got together and went through the Mahabharata that was in vogue at the time. There are several recensions. Recension means version. There was one that was popular in South India, another that was more popular in the North. So they went through them both, and I think the most popular is known today as the Bombay recension. So that Bombay recension came to 96,000 verses, by far the longest scripture in world culture. But when this board of scholars went through this 96,000 verse Bombay recension, or Bombay edition they might call it, of the Mahabharata, they could these are great scholars, they could very easily recognize certain portions that had been inserted into the Mahabharata. Scholars call that interpolations. So these interpolations happened over many centuries, so that Bombay recension was filled with these interpolations, these added portions, and the goal of this board of scholars was to remove all that added material, which they did. It brought the length of the Mahabharata down from 96,000 verses, I think I remember these numbers correctly, from 96,000 to 84,000. 84,000 is still amazingly long. So these 84,000 verses form what we now call the critical edition, and the version we're using here is based on that critical edition. But 84,000 Vistarena. So very elaborately, these teachings of the Mahabharata have been told by Rishi Vaishampayana to King Janamejaya. And all of this is about, in the third line, Kritsnam Charitam. Kritsnam, entire, Charitam, life and activities, all the life and activities, Kurunam, of the Kuru family, Pandavanam cha, and of the Pandavas. So all of the activities and actions of the Pandavas and Kauravas have all been told to you in great detail. Bharata, O great King Janamejaya, all of this has been taught. And with this, Rishi Vaishampayana concludes his narration, and now we pop out, so to speak, to the outermost story. The outermost story takes place in Naimisha Aranya, the famous forest where all the rishis live. In that forest, there's one famous king, Shaunaka. And Shaunaka is doing a ritual that's done every 12 years. So he is performing this 12-year ritual. And just like King Janamejaya invited Vaishampayana to come and narrate the story, in a similar way, King Shaunaka has invited a professional storyteller to come and narrate the Mahabharata during his ritual. Apparently that's the style. During breaks in the ritual, you hear these old, wonderful stories. And I said it's being narrated by a professional storyteller. Suta apparently is the caste or family of storytellers. The more elaborate name here is Ugrashrava Sauti, but it means that he belongs to this family of storytellers. So Suta is the storyteller who is narrating Vaishampayana's narration and narrating all of this to King Shaunaka. Suta uvacha, etat shrutva dvija shreshtat, etat shrutva dvija shreshtat, Saraja Janamejaya, Saraja Janamejaya, Vismito Bhavaratyartam, Vismito Bhavaratyartam, Yajna Karmantareshvata, Yajna Karmantareshvata. In the second line, so remember the context. Now, this is the outermost story. Suta is narrating all of this to King Shaunaka. Saha Raja, so now Suta is narrating the story of that king, Saha Raja, that king, not Shaunaka, but that king. Who is that? Janamejaya. So that king Janamejaya, who, in the first line, etat shrutva, having heard all this entire story of the Mahabharata, having heard all this from whom? Dvija shreshtat, from this best of twice-borns, the best of Brahmins, a reference to Vaishampayana. So King Janamejaya, having heard the entire narration, excuse me, King Janamejaya, having heard the entire narration of the Mahabharata from Rishi Vaishampayana, what happened? This, in the third line, Vismitaha abhavat. King Janamejaya abhavat, he became Vismitaha, amazed, overwhelmed, atyartam, extremely. He became extremely amazed, having heard this entire story with all of its twists and turns, with Sri Krishna's Vishvarupa Darshana several times, as we discussed before. And so all of this has now been heard by King Janamejaya, who is just amazed by what he's heard. And when was it heard? Yajna karma antareshu ata. Antareshu, it was heard, antareshu, in the intervals between yajna karma, between the individual rituals. So as I explained before, this sarpa satra, this snake ritual being done for King Janamejaya was very elaborate, took place over a number of days, many, many individual rituals with intervals in between. And during those intervals, Rishi Vaishampayana narrated this whole story a little bit at a time, episode by episode. Some of you might know or remember that in the late 1980s, the entire Mahabharata was presented on Doordarshan TV as episodes. 96 episodes. This was the late 1980s, and I'm told that all of India came to a stop when these episodes were shown on TV. Everyone was glued to their TV, and they wouldn't go out and shop. They wouldn't do anything. They would stay home and watch each episode, 96 episodes of Mahabharata. That was produced by B.R. Chopra. If you wonder why I know so much about this, is I watched that whole thing twice. And in fact, I learned a little bit of Hindi by doing so. Anyway, my point is, just as so many people watched these 96 episodes of the Mahabharata when it was shown on TV, a little bit in the same way, King Janamejaya heard these episodes of the Mahabharata being taught by Rishi Vaishampayana in the intervals between rituals. Then, remember, this is Suta now, speaking to King Shaunaka. Tata samapayamasuhu, tata samapayamasuhu, karma tattasya yajakaha, karma tattasya yajakaha, Pujitaschapi ragnya, pujitaschapi ragnya, tato jagmuryatagatam, tato jagmuryatagatam. So, Suta is narrating the events of King Janamajaya's snake ritual. So, tataha, then, when in the end of the second line, yajakaha, priests, the worshippers, the ones performing the rituals. So then, yajakaha, the priests who were performing that snake ritual for King Janamejaya, what did they do back in the first line? Samapayamasuhu. They completed tat karma in the second line. They completed that ritual, that set of rituals, tasya, for him, for King Janamejaya. The priests concluded the rituals, completed the rituals for the sake of King Janamejaya, and they were pujitaha cha, in the third line. They were honored, api cha, they were pujitaha, they were honored by rajna, by the king, by King Janamejaya. Of course, how do you honor priests? By giving them dakshina. So that's the intent here. So King Janamejaya gave dakshina, the proper payment unto these priests, and tataha, then jagmuhu, the priests left and returned, yatagatam, they returned the way they came. They returned to their homes. Then, Visarjayatva vipranstan, Visarjayatva vipranstan, Raja Janamejaya, Raja Janamejaya, Tatas Takshashilayasa, Tatas Takshashilayasa, Punarayad Gajahvayam, Punarayad Gajahvayam. In the second line, Raja api Janamejaya, then King Janamejaya, what did he do? In the first line, Visarjayatva, having bid farewell, Viprantan, to those priests. So having dismissed the priests, having bid them farewell, having allowed them to leave. Third line, Tataha, then, Saha, he, King Janamejaya, Takshashilayaha, from Takshashila, where he was performing his rituals, Punaha, then, Ayat, he went. He left Takshashila and went forth where? Gaja Ahvayam, another name for Hastinapura. So he left Takshashila and went back to Hastinapura. Hastinapura is King Janamajaya's ancestral home. In the story, very elaborate story of the whole Mahabharata, it turns out that King Janamejaya is the great grandchild of Arjuna. So just to trace it back very quickly, King Janamejaya is the son of Parikshit, great king. Parikshit is the son of Abhimanyu, and you might remember Abhimanyu is the son of Arjuna and Subhadra. So King Janamejaya is the great grandchild of Arjuna, and so he returns to his ancestral home, which is Hastinapura. And we'll just see one more verse. Etatte sarvam hakyatam, etatte sarvam hakyatam, Vaishampayana kirtitam, Vaishampayana kirtitam, Vyasagnyaya samakyatam, Vyasagnyaya samakyatam, Sarpasatre nrapasyaha, Sarpasatre nrapasyaha. Etat sarvam, all of this, akyatam, has been told. All of this has been told te, to you. Remember the context. This is now Suta, the professional storyteller, narrating all of this to King Shaunaka. So all of this that was originally narrated by Vaishampayana, all of this has now been narrated to you, King Shaunaka. What was narrated? Vaishampayana kirtitam. All that was originally told by Rishi Vaishampayana. And why did Vaishampayana narrate it in the first place? Vyasa Agnyaya. Because he was directed to do so by Vyasa. Vyasa, having composed this Mahabharata, then made it Vaishampayana's duty to record it and to pass it on to others. So all of this has been told samakyatam. It was well told. It was properly narrated by Vaishampayana, by Vyasa's direction. And it was narrated by Vaishampayana where? Sarpasatre, at the snake sacrifice, the ritual, at the snake ritual, nrapasyaha, of the king, of King Janamejaya. It was all narrated properly by Vaishampayana, and these words are spoken by Suta to King Shaunaka in the outermost story. And there are just, I think, 7 verses left that we'll save for our next class. Our next class will be the final class in our study of the Mahabharata. We started 5 years ago, and I'll summarize our 5 years of study in our next class, but our next class will be the final class, and it's wonderful timing. Our next class, next Saturday, happens to be the date of Guru Purnima. Guru Purnima is the full moon date in which we worship our gurus. Some of you may know that it's Guru Purnima because it's Vyasa Purnima. It's the date of the full moon when Vyasa was born. So Vyasa Purnima is Guru Purnima. So on Vyasa Purnima, we will conclude our study of Vyasa's major work, this Mahabharata. So I'm delighted by the nice timing. I'm also delighted that we'll be concluding this wonderful story. And let me just mention that of course our studies won't come to an end next week, but we'll continue. Afterwards, we're going to take up a wonderful text. In fact, I have to say it's probably my favorite Vedantic text. That text is Atma Bodha, self-knowledge, of Shankaracharya. So that will be our next text that we'll study after we conclude our study of the Mahabharata in our next class. So please join us for next week's webcast. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritangamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat.